Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, it's homecoming week and a premier matchup. It's USC versus Nebraska in the Coliseum.
Yeah, this is a new week, which means another opportunity for this USC football team. This is an interesting matchup against Nebraska, right? They start the season 5-1. They're playing well. Then they lose 3 straight, right? They're also trying to get bowl eligible. They need to win one more game of these last 3 to get to that. And you know, it's tough right now when you prepare for an opponent, when you don't know which team's going to show up, right? It could be the team from the beginning of the season that started 5-1, or it can be a team from the last 3 weeks that's been struggling. But either way, these last 3 weeks for USC are very important. You have to treat this almost as a new season, right? And first and foremost, we have to win 2 of the next 3 games to become bowl eligible. And it may not seem like a big deal because we're not playing for the playoff, we're not playing for a New Year's Six bowl game, but it is important to go to a bowl game. It looks a lot worse when you don't even get a chance to play in a bowl game, right? When you don't win 6 games, when you don't go 500. So that's very important for this team. And you may say it's not a lot to play for, but it is, especially for the players and the coaches. The other side of that is the seniors, right? You want to leave a legacy that you're proud of here at USC. And I know expectations or the season fell short of your expectations that you had going into the year, especially after the first 2 games, and everyone was feeling great, but you still have an opportunity to close out the season the way you want and keep some momentum going into 2025 in this offseason. So that's very important for the seniors. And then last and most obvious is it's, you know, a new quarterback for USC starting this football game in Jayden Maiava, right? And you know, that we'll talk about that here in a second, but I truly believe we're going to learn a lot about Jayden in this offense over the next couple of weeks and you know, see if he's a quarterback of the future for USC football.
Yeah, we have a lot of newsy things to talk about this episode, partially because I was sick for the past week, and apologies for no UW episode and just a bye-week episode in general. I tried my hardest to stay healthy this season, but my body gave up. Luckily, it was the bye week, but of course, newsy things happen, one of which being USC making a quarterback change. And Cody, I definitely wanted to get your thoughts there. Overall, what do you think about this move at this point in the season?
Yeah, I want to start off first by saying that, and I think I speak for the majority of Trojan fans and the Trojan family when I say I'm nothing but appreciative for Miller Moss and his commitment to USC football, and especially in today's era of college football where it's easy to leave, right? The transfer portal allows players to go elsewhere when they don't become the starter, right?
Yeah.
And Miller sat for a couple of years and stuck through that. So I'm very thankful for that and wish him nothing but the best. Whether it's here at USC and he stays, you never know what happens over these next 3 games, or he goes elsewhere. Wish him nothing but the best in his future. But with that being said, I think this decision really came down to 3 things. And the first one for me is the turnover issue. It started to become a problem. USC's 1-4 in the last 5 games. During that 5-game stretch, he has 7 interceptions. When you're losing close games, the margin for error is too small to continue to have those mistakes. The next thing for me is just a lack of the vertical passing attack.
Yeah.
When you're not pushing the football down the field. And we did a great job of having yards after catch, right? You get the football to our playmakers in space, but you have to have that vertical attack so that defenses can't play so close to the line of scrimmage, right? They have to respect some of those deep shots so it becomes easier in the pass game underneath or in the run game. And that was really just non-existent. There were times this year that guys were open down the field. We just couldn't connect on them. And then the third thing for me is just Miller not really being a factor in the run game, right? And he's a great pocket passer. I think he does a good job when he's in rhythm, has time, has protection, can go through his reads, get the ball to his playmakers in space. But when it comes to having to take off and create with his feet, that's just not his type of play, right? And when you look at Lincoln Riley's offense, when it's at its best, is when he has a quarterback that can create on the ground, that can pull it on some of those zone reads. Not saying Miller didn't do that, but that's not his style of play, right? When you look at former quarterbacks that have won Heisman trophies, that have been successful with Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, right, and Kyler Murray, guys like that, it's just not Miller's type of quarterback or the type of style that Miller plays at the quarterback spot, which is fine. And he has been successful this year. We saw at times how good he can be in this offense, but it's just for me to take that next step, you have to be able to create a little bit more on your feet. Now looking at Jayden, I think he does bring that factor into play. We saw, I think, one of his first plays was him running around, finishing in the end zone. So I'm excited to see what the offense looks like under him in that aspect. Also, he has a great arm. I watched his tape last year from UNLV. Has a ton of deep throws on tape. Does a good job of pushing the football down the field. The receivers this week in practice have reiterated that. Yeah. Talked about his arm strength, and I've seen him throw in person before. He absolutely does have a great arm. He's got to be able to be accurate with that, right? It can't just be all about arm strength, but he's got to be able to take that next step with accuracy. And the thing for me where I think is still a pretty even playing field from a year ago was he did have a turnover problem, right? So that has to be fixed. He was a freshman, though, so you do expect that, and you know you're going to watch your tape and learn from that, but we haven't seen what it looks like in Lincoln Riley's offense yet, so I'm excited there, but it's a huge opportunity for Jayden, and you know, I'm excited to see, like I said, what this offense looks like and if he can be the quarterback of the future for USC.
What did this, in your opinion, what did this past bye week look like for Jayden now that he knows that he's the guy?
Yeah, it's just an opportunity for him to get some reps with the ones, right? And nothing should change for Jayden mentally or in preparation. And the good quarterbacks, the great quarterbacks, while you're waiting your turn, right, while you're a backup, you have to still prepare as a starter, right? And I fully expect that Jayden did that, right, under Coach Heward, under Lincoln Riley. But when you do get your opportunity, when your number is called upon, whether it's, taking over as a starter or an injury happens, whatever it may be, if you prepared as a starter, even as a second or a third string, like I did here at USC. My second year, I was third string, right? But I still prepared as if I was playing every Saturday so that when the time did come for me to be the starter, I was already ready, right? So I expect Jayden to do that. Like I said, hearing from the players in practice, it sounds like he's really just hit the ground running. And you do. When you're a backup, you split reps with the starter at a smaller scale, right? The starter will get 8 of the 10 reps. You'll get 2 with the ones just so you can stay in a rhythm, but now he's getting the full reps. And I expect him to take all of them this week because he's got to get ready to play. And this is a good defense in Nebraska, and we'll preview that in a second. But, yeah, I mean, just for him, the operation has to be the same, the way you prepare, the way you watch film, but practice is just a little bit more amplified, especially during the bye week because now you're going with the ones instead of the backups.
A lot of has been made, and rightfully so, about the automatic leadership position that a quarterback takes. Obviously, it's kind of a passing of the torch, if you will. How do you expect him to approach that? Because you kind of do have to be a natural leader, whether that's vocally or physically on the field. Like, how do you approach that at this part of the season if you're Jayden?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because everyone, when you think of a leader, everyone thinks someone's out there who with the hoorah speeches and yelling at people and getting everybody going. That's not always true, right? You can lead by example, and I'm glad you said that because that brings up 2 points. Is he may not want to step on Miller's toes this week and come in and be like, all right, I'm the guy now.
Yeah.
Push him aside. Hoorah, this is who I am. Don't be fake. Just be real. That's what's important, especially in an NFL locker room. Guys can tell when you're being fake. Guys can tell when you're putting on a show, trying to be a leader. Just be yourself. Whether you're the starter, you're the backup, you're a captain, you're not, just be yourself. That's what guys gravitate towards, especially in the locker room and especially in this scenario, right? You have 3 games left to go. You're not the starter from the beginning of the year. You've been the backup for the majority of the season. Just go in there, be yourself. If you're a vocal leader, great. If not, lead by example, right? Let your playing on the field do all the talking, and guys will follow that. Guys will want to play with someone. And like I think Kyle Ford or Deuce Robinson, I think, said in post-practice interviews on Tuesday about how he likes to be around them off the field as well, right? Because I've been on teams where there's guys on the field that are leaders, but then when you get in the locker room, they change up a little bit, and you don't hang out outside of the practice field.
Okay.
But for the players to reiterate that and just say the type of leader he is, and they've said he's not the most vocal guy in the world. Which,
shy, yeah.
Like I said, it's tough to be in that position or be vocal when you're the backup.
Yeah.
Now, but when
and
you're the starter,
too.
or it's your first year at USC, but when you become the starter, just don't change up, right? You can be a little bit more vocal, and your role expands a little bit as a captain, as a leader, but still be yourself. And I expect Jayden to do that. And obviously, he's had a great couple weeks of practice from what the players have been saying, and I'm excited for his opportunity this Saturday.
Well, you mentioned this is a good Nebraska defense that Jayden will be going up against, so excited to dive into the preview. Before we do, just a couple of reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are VictoryPodUSC. That's also where we post updates if I get sick or something changes in our podcasting schedule, so that's where you can get the latest news as well. You could also send us a text if you're an audio listener. It says in the description, send us a text. You can click on it. It'll open your messaging app, and that's how you can get a text from us.
Make sure you put your name, though,
yes,
just
put
a
your
reminder.
Name. Yes.
Because it doesn't put your name automatically. It says where you're from, right?
It does.
So put your name so we know who it is, and we can give you a shout out.
Look at you, Cody. Always on it.
I got a reminder for your reminders. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. I need it. And I also have a new reminder. There's a new blood donation competition happening among Big Ten schools, and there's $1 million prize on the line. If you bleed Cardinal and Gold, donate blood and submit to the USC Trojans competition at big10.org/Abbott before December 7th. So people can literally bleed Cardinal and Gold, Cody.
Did you write that?
I did not.
Oh, okay. I was like, did someone
you
send
putting me on the spot? Yeah, no, that's an ad read.
That was pretty catchy, though, if it was.
Thank you.
It's cool. They do it on television, too. They've been putting up on some of the Big Ten games on Fox, on CBS, on all these networks about the Big Ten blood drive. And we're not in the top 5 right now.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
wow,
they
you
showed
go.
the schools. So we've got to
come on,
get things going
bleed,
a little bit.
People,
but yeah, no,
bleed
it's for a great cause. Yeah. It's for a great cause. So hopefully if you can get out there and donate, make sure you do that.
Great job, Cody. You should take over as.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I remember seeing it a couple weeks ago, and I didn't even know about it until then. So I don't think a lot of fans really know about it. They haven't advertised it as much as you think they would.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we're bringing it up here. But yeah, if you can, if you have the opportunity to or able to, please do so.
Alrighty, Cody. Let's head into the preview. I know you like to start with the coaching staff. We talked about a new face on USC's offense. There's also a new face on Nebraska's offense.
Yeah.
But you'll get to that when you get to it. Start with the head coach for Nebraska.
Yeah, this is like you said. This is an interesting coaching breakdown this week, but I'm going to start with their head coach, Matt Rule. No change here. This is his second season as Nebraska's head coach. He's been coaching for 27 years. 12 of those has been as a head coach. In his first year at Nebraska, they went 5-7, and this year they're off to a 5-4 start through 9 games, but have lost their last 3 in a row. They started out the season 5-1. Most recently, they lost to UCLA 27-20 2 weeks ago before their bye. They're also coming off a bye, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game against USC. Now, Matt Rule is one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in the country when it comes to turning a program around. He has been phenomenal at rebuilding programs wherever he goes. Outside the NFL, he had a little bit of a tough time in Carolina, but
very different though.
College and NFL are a lot different. Very true. But Rule was named the head coach at Temple from 2013 to 2016, which is his first head coaching job. The Owls in his first season were 2-10. Right, his first year there, they went 2-10. In just 2 short years, he had back-to-back 10-win seasons in 2015 and 2016, including a conference title in 2016, the school's first title in almost 40 years. Which is unbelievable, the amount of time that he did that.
Yeah.
So then, obviously, he becomes popular, and some bigger schools start reaching out. Next, he goes to Baylor as his next job. In his first year at Baylor, he went 1-11. And again, in just 2 short years before leaving Baylor, he completely turned that program around. He led the Bears to an 11-3 record, the first Power 5 school in the history of college football to go from 11 losses to 11 wins in just 2 seasons or less.
Wow.
Rule is now hoping to do the same and have the same type of success at Nebraska.
We actually talked to Coach Riley about it on Trojans Live because I got to fill in for you on Monday, and he kind of mentioned it's a similar type of setup for both of them in the sense that they're both coming to like blue blood programs that have that history that want to get back to the top. So it's interesting the comparisons there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, with Coach Rule, obviously he went from Temple to Baylor, then he went to the NFL with the Carolina Panthers. He's had some short stints at all these places, but it really feels like, and from what he said, he's here to stay at Nebraska, and same with Lincoln Riley, want to turn that program around and be great for years to come. Now, leading into that, and one of the things that he's made a big move this week to get towards that success.
Literally this week,
which is interesting. And hang with me here a little bit because I'm going to talk about both offensive coordinators, but the reason I say both is because they have a new one as of 3 days ago? 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
So their offensive coordinator, I know a lot of college football fans will recognize this name, as of 2 days ago, is Dana Holgorsen, right? So Matt Rule added him to his staff just a week ago. During the bye week, he had Holgorsen come in, which isn't abnormal, right? You're used to seeing...
As like an analyst, correct?
Places I've been, Cliff Kingsbury the same way.
Yeah.
I've been places, Coach Ogeron brought on, when he took over as interim head coach, brought on some analysts as well for the defensive line, things like that. In the NFL... right, we've had different coaches come in and mid-season and kind of shadow a little bit and help out when they're not coaching elsewhere. So that's not out of the ordinary. But what is out of the ordinary and almost unheard of is that Holgorsen is now taking over as the offensive coordinator. And he has only been it's not like he's been here in the offseason. It's not like he was there in the spring and then went elsewhere or came in, because sometimes you have coaches that come in and mirror or shadow for fall camp and then leave elsewhere, and then maybe – if things don't go well, they come back or something like that. But it's unheard of to bring a coach in he's been there less than 2 weeks, and now he's already calling the offense, right? And it's tough. You can't put in your entire offense. He has to go off of what their other offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, has done, and I'll talk about him in a second, and just basically call plays off of that. Now, you can add in little wrinkles, but it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic. But why this team's excited and why I think it will work is because Dana Holgorsen is one of, if not the pioneers of offensive minds in college football. He is phenomenal.
From the Leach Tree, correct?
Everywhere he's been. Yeah, he's with Mike Leach Tree.
Yeah.
And Satterfield's pro style. We'll talk about that a little bit too when we bring on the offense. So it's 2 different conflicting offenses or schemes. So that's going to be interesting as well. But just to give you kind of a background on Holgorsen, he's been a part of some of the best offenses in the history of college football during his time at places like Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Houston, West Virginia. Now, for all my diehard football fans out there, and I'm sure you've maybe seen it before. Have you seen the Tavon Austin highlight video with the soundtrack, the Kid Ink song in the background?
No.
Okay, well,
sorry.
I'm sure a lot of fans that are listening have. You haven't seen that? The Tavon, when they say put on the best highlight tape ever made, they put on Tavon Austin's highlight tape from college at West Virginia.
I feel like I'm living under a rock. Well, I apologize.
Don't worry, everyone. I'll show it to her after the episode ends.
Also, the song threw me off, but yes, sorry, continue.
I'd sing it, but there's cussing at the beginning, so I don't want to sing it so everyone knows. But yes, it's by Kid Ink. It's a famous highlight tape back in the day. I
apologize.
I say back in the day. But anyways, that video, that highlight tape during his time at West Virginia was when Holgorsen was his head coach, right? So that's when they had that success. That was those years in 2011, 2012 with Tavon Austin, with Geno Smith, with Stedman Bailey. In 2012, Tavon Austin had 72 carries. He was a running back his first 3 years, but they used him out of the backfield. But his senior year, he had 72 carries. He also had 114 receptions on top of that, had over 1,900 total yards, and had 15 touchdowns. a big part of that is because Holgorsen was calling the offense. So do I think they're going to get to that right away at Nebraska? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But a big part for me, and we'll talk about in the offensive segment, is that they've always been more so of wanting to lean on the run. That's been Matt Rule's MO, is that we want to run the football, we want to control the clock, but you have Dylan Raiola, who is a 5-star quarterback, who has a ton of potential. He's struggling a little bit right now, but he has the ability to go out there and win you games with his arm. Does he want to get away from his pro-style system that he's been doing, bring Holgorsen in and let Dylan Raiola let it rip, right, and build that confidence back up? So we'll see. But now their former offensive coordinator, and I'm going to mention him because I think he is going to have a lot of input in the game plan still this week, is Marcus Satterfield. This is his second season as Nebraska's OC or former OC, or however you want to say it. Satterfield has been coaching for 26 years. 13 of those have been as an offensive coordinator. This is now his 8th season with Matt Rule. Another interesting thing, Holgorsen has never coached with Matt Rule as well. I went back to their history, so it's not like they had any overlap. No,
okay,
that's the part that surprised me the most.
Yeah.
Was I would love to be a fly on the wall in that first meeting they had, or I'm sure they've connected elsewhere. When you're a coach, you know kind of everybody, but they've never had overlap like Holgorsen and Lincoln have, or Mike Leach, or that type of offense. Rule and Holgorsen have never coached together, so that's another interesting factor.
Wow.
Him and Satterfield have been together for 8 years, so this was a big decision, but I do think it's going to be a positive thing for Nebraska football. I just don't know if it'll be this year, and especially this week. But
well, the timing is interesting.
It's unheard of. It really is to bring in a coach on this short of notice, and now he's all of a sudden calling plays. He's not even just an input on game plan. He is the offensive coordinator. He's going to be calling plays. But when you look at the defensive side of the ball, there's no question who their defensive coordinator is. He's done a phenomenal job the last couple of years. His name is Tony White. Second season as Nebraska's defensive coordinator. White has been coaching for 18 seasons, with 5 of those as a DC. Now, some Trojan fans may recognize that name. White attended UCLA from 1997 to 2000 and was a leader and a 3-year starter for the Bruins at linebacker on that football team. So some throwback Trojan fans might recognize that name. As a coach, he has spent time at UCLA, San Diego State, Arizona State, and then most recently, he was a defensive coordinator at Syracuse from 2020 to 2022 before joining Rule at Nebraska. He's been nominated for the Broyles Award, which goes to the nation's best assistant each of the last 2 years, in 2022 at Syracuse and then last year at Nebraska.
Wow.
In 2023, his first year as Nebraska's defensive coordinator, which was a year ago, he led the Cornhuskers defense to their best statistical season since joining the Big Ten in 2011. There were drastic changes on that side of the football. They've continued to do that this year as well. Now, I was going to ask you a little bit later, but this is a good point to bring it up because they do call their defense something unique. And
I saw it in the notes.
I know you already saw it, so I'm going to give everyone a second at home, just a little trivia, a little Aflac trivia questions they do. We're going to do. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. If you don't know at home, we'll give you a second, or if you do know what Nebraska's defense is called? Okay, go ahead. Fill everybody in.
The Black Shirts.
They are called the Black Shirts. Do you know why they're called the Black Shirts? I know you didn't read that part because I didn't put it in there.
I didn't, and I'm going to guess that
it has to do with Monty Kiffin a little bit.
Oh, then my guess is not worth it. Okay,
long story short, in 1964, Coach Bob Devaney.
I totally remember that.
Yeah, when you were watching football and scouting, Bob Devaney. So the story is that they were going into practice, but the coach, Devaney, wanted to know who the starters were, have practice jerseys that would separate the starters from the backup. They had it on offense, but they didn't have it on defense. So he had his assistant coach literally go to the store or a sports store down the road like a Dick's or a sporting goods store to go down there, bought some cover-up jerseys. They only had black ones available. Bought those, came back, and now the starters wore that. It became a tradition. Monty Kiffin kind of elevated that. Bo Pelini elevated a little bit. But now when you earn a starting spot on Nebraska's defense, you're now referred to as a black shirt. So
that's cool.
And it's cool. They made it their own thing again.
Yeah.
That's what you get, though, with some of these programs like USC when you have these huge traditions, right? The lighting of the torch, Traveler running around the stadium, right? Nebraska has the black shirts, all these different things.
That's what makes college football so great.
It's awesome. The tradition, everything behind it. But yes, just so everyone knows, and we'll get in their defense in a little bit, but that is what Nebraska's defense is known as, the black shirts. But this is going to be a huge challenge. Obviously, Jayden Maiava making his first start.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley is going to have to game plan against a very good defense with a new quarterback. It's going to be interesting this week, but we have to be ready to go and start fast on Saturday.
Alrighty, let's look at Nebraska's offense. Now, I know you like to start with stats, and I guess we're going to start contextually with how we got here for a OC change.
Yeah, they've struggled on offense, and the stats back that up. Scoring offense, only 23 points per game, and this is a 2-year issue. I think that's why the decision was made.
Okay.
They struggled last year as well, going 5-7, but scoring offense averaging 23 points per game, which is 99th in college football. Total offense 350 yards per game, 96. Passing offense with Raiola, they have had some success there, just not enough to sustain throughout the year. Not enough to be consistent and win some of these games. Only 229 yards per game, which is 66. The rushing offense has been non-existent. 120 yards per game, which is 101st in college football. Third down's been decent with a 43% conversion rate. They've just struggled to move the football and finish in the end zone.
Now I'm going to assume that Dylan Raiola is one of the key players for Nebraska.
Yeah, I don't have him as a red dot, though, because
Interesting.
normally you pick the quarterback, but he's just struggled as of late, right?
True freshman.
I've talked about the consistency. He's shown flashes, which you want to see, and the potential is there, but he's struggled these last couple of weeks, and he's got to be able to get the job done, at a consistent rate to show that he can be a red dot player or a game plan type player for opposing defenses. But he is a good player, and he does have a lot of upside. He's a 6'3", 230-pound freshman, has 64% completion percentage on the year, 1,900 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He has been very good at home, but he has struggled on the road this year, which is an advantage for us. Has 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions in 3 road games so far this year. We have to get pressure on him and force him to make some of those mistakes. As a freshman, he struggles when you bring pressure, when he has to do a lot of pre-snap identification. He can't play fast, right? So we have to be able to slow him down in that regard. Now, I do have a red dot player in their backfield. Running back Dante Dowdwell, 6'2", 225-pound sophomore, 112 carries, 471 yards, averaging over 4 yards per carry and 8 touchdowns. He is their lead back, but you're going to see 3 different backs in the backfield. They do like to rotate. Now, Dowdwell is the majority of the carries. He's going to be pretty much their every down back, but they do rotate guys. Think back to Wisconsin, right? When they had all 3 of those players rotate a good amount.
Yeah.
So you've got to be ready for all of them. The next one is running back Emmett Johnson, 58 carries, 284 yards, and 1 touchdown on the year. Their other back that I think is more of their playmaking back that they like to use out of the backfield in the pass game as well is running back Ramir Johnson, a 5'10", 200-pound senior, 41 carries, 180 yards, also has 19 receptions for 165 yards, and a touchdown. Is good both as a runner and a receiver out of the backfield. Like I said, love to use him in the pass game, so we've got to be ready for that, especially when we go man-to-man. Now, some of their receivers are very dangerous this week, and they use their size to their advantage, and it's going to be interesting when we go man-to-man to see who follows some of these guys around. But the first one's wide receiver Isaiah Neure, 6'4", 220-pound senior, my second red dot player of the week. He's a transfer from Texas, has 25 receptions, 408 yards, and 5 touchdowns, averages over 16 yards per catch. So you think with that size, more of a possession receiver, but he has the ability to break off some of those big plays. He does have some good speed. Think last week with Washington, their receiver Boston, right? He had the size, but he's very good with the football in his hands as well. Very similar player. Their other wide receiver, another very big player, is wide receiver Jamal Banks, 6'4", 220-pound senior, 27 receptions, 360 yards, 2 touchdowns. Borderline red dot player. I didn't want to give it to all 3 of them, but I do have one last red dot player. Wide receiver Ja'Cory Barney Jr., 6', 170-pound freshman. And you may ask yourself, why is a freshman getting a red dot?
I was about to ask you that.
As a quarterback, when you watch the film, it becomes evident that Dylan Raiola, being a freshman, works with a lot of his underclass, and right in the offseason before you become the starter,
that makes sense,
you're working with the younger guys. You're going to meetings with them. You're doing a lot of their freshman activities. So he loves to find Barney Jr. when he can. Has 38 receptions, which leads the team, 308 yards, no touchdowns yet. But when Raiola gets in trouble, when things break down, he wants to find Barney Jr. So we have to stick with him, especially when Raiola rolls out. And then the last guy to pay attention to is tight end Thomas Fidone, the second, 6'6", 255-pound junior. He's a tight end with 28 receptions and 289 yards.
Now, you alluded to this at the top, but you mentioned that under Scatterfield, it was a pro-style offense. Holgorsen, we mentioned, comes from the Leach Tree. It's an air raid type offense. So you have those conflicting schemes, but you also have the conflict of time.
Yes.
You can't change too much. So what is your guess, Cody, as to what we will see on Saturday?
This was the most interesting breakdown for me, probably that we've done in the last 3 years, because of it's uncommon. It's unheard of to have a coach come in for a week to be an analyst and then take over as an offensive coordinator within that short amount of time. Now, I know it's Dana Holgorsen, who is a great play caller, who comes from the Mike Leach tree, who has some of the best offenses in the history of college football, but it's still unbelievably hard to be able to install what you do as a play caller, because this isn't his offense. Right now, you can add some wrinkles into the pass game. Football is a copycat league, right? So there are going to be a lot of same concepts, whether it's pro style, spread, even some of the heavy run game type offenses, the pro style or the I don't want to say wing T, but some of those triple option type plays that when they do throw the football, they do pick from the West Coast or the spread offense and their concept. So that'll work a little bit in his favor. But overall, it's tough for me. My biggest thing for the coaching staff this week, and what I think Danton Lynn and his defense is going to do, is focus more on personnel on offense instead of focusing on what they're going to do schematically. Now, you can go back and watch their tape from the last couple of weeks, but I don't think it's going to benefit you. And most recently, Holgorsen was at Houston to go back and watch Holgorsen's tape. I think you're going to be doing a little bit of over preparation if you do that.
Okay.
Because like I said, I don't see, and very rarely on this podcast when I'm watching film do I get stumped a little bit and confused.
I know.
I just don't know what to expect, right?
Yeah.
Because do you want to keep doing what you're doing on offense and just have Holgorsen call the plays based on the same game plan, although it's not working? Because when you look at it overall, it's a pro-style offense. They're going to do a fair amount of under center. It's very similar to Washington a week ago. They're going to get under center, do play action. They want to lean on the run game. Matt Rule said that when we are at our best, we want to control the pace of the game by running the football. But again, their run game's been non-existent, and they're still 50-50 pass to run this year, so they like to stay balanced. But where they're at their best is when they can run the football well, have some play action off of that, not force Dylan Raiola to be the hero and put too much pressure on him as a freshman. But now you bring in Holgorsen, who is the run and gun, the air raid definition.
Yeah.
Let it rip. So are they going to try to do some of that this week and let Raiola go out there and get his confidence back? Because like I said, he started out the season, I think, with 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's gone, I think, 1-7 or 1 touchdown, 6 interceptions in the last, I think, 3 or 4 games, right? So he struggled to get that confidence. He's regressing more than he's progressing, which has been a frustrating thing when you have a younger player. You want to see him take those next steps and keep building confidence. So for me, I think they maybe bring Holgorsen in so they can go out there and let it rip and let him feel confident. And they have good receivers. Let him throw it to him and use some of these running backs out of the backfield as well.
Well, the good news for USC in that regard is, as you mentioned, they also had a bye. It sounds like the secondary that has been banged up majorly the last couple of games will be fully healthy for this game. It sounds like it if we're reading the tea leaves. So at least if they are going to let it rip and have a huge passing attack, USC will have some of their key figures in the secondary back.
Yeah, and whoever is out there on Saturday, they're going to have their hands full with 3 very talented wide receivers like we just talked about. The first one, Isaiah Neyor, 6'4", Jamal Banks, 6'4". They are weapons down in the red zone. But it's interesting because they have this type of size down in the red zone. They've struggled down there to finish in the end zone. They're 127th in college football in red zone efficiency and red zone conversion rate, right? So they have not been able – it's kind of like Washington, but Washington can move the football up and down the field. Nebraska has struggled in total offense as well and getting the ball up and down the field. So this is an offense that like I said, you don't make this change if there's not a lot of issues going on that side of the football. But where they do excel, and what I think is important to talk about is that receiver position. The other guy is Ja'Cory Barney Jr., the talented freshman I talked about that Raiola likes to find. But the interesting thing for me, and sticking on this for a second, is when we do play man-to-man, how Danton Lynn is going to use our secondary, our corners specifically, who they're going to cover, right? When you have 2 wide receivers that are at 6'4", and have that size and have that physicality, are we going to use the Carlos Nicholson, who's a little bit bigger, Jacoby Covington, 6'2"? You have John Humphrey, who's a bigger corner as well, or Jalen Smith, who's not the biggest guy in the world, but he makes up for it with his physicality. He can cover some of these bigger playmakers on the outside. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. And then when you go in the slot and cover some of these talented guys inside, is he going to move Jalen around a little bit? Greedy Vance has been playing well at the nickel position too, but is he going to stay inside if they move Neyor, Banks around? Because they will do this. They'll put him at outside. They'll put him at slot, try to create some mismatches. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I have full faith in Danton Lynn and his game plan for this week. But yeah, we've got to be ready for these 3 very talented wide receivers. On
the whole, how would you evaluate Raiola as a quarterback, given those ups and downs?
Yeah, it's been exactly that. Raiola's had an up and down season so far. And when you watch the film, you see flashes of how good he can be, and he has a ton of potential. I truly believe that, but you also see flashes of him being a true freshman with a lot of pressure on his shoulders, right? He's expected to be the savior of this program, a 5-star. You know, who knows what the NIL deal was? It's probably the weight of an NFL contract. So you have a lot of pressure, and he played well early on, right? And he did. Through 5 games, he had 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, but over the last 4, he's only thrown 1 touchdown to 6 interceptions. Now, those games have been on the road, right? They had a lot of home games early on. I think their first 4 games were at home, and then the last 3 have been on the road. So it's a little, difficult as a first-year starter, as a freshman, going to some of these atmospheres, playing Indiana, playing at Ohio State. So I understand that. But the problem, I think, with this offense is he's regressing a little bit. And as a freshman, it's tough to say you're regressing because it's your first year. Obviously, you can continue to get better. But with how well he started out, to see him kind of going downhill, I think has been the biggest concern for this offense and Matt Rule. His accuracy has been up and down so far this year. He'll make a throw on film to where it flashes, to where that's an NFL-level throw, and then he'll make a couple where severely underthrown behind the player, not a tight spiral, not spinning it well. Uncertainty. I think that's the biggest thing for him right now, too, is him second-guessing himself. When you lose that confidence as a quarterback, you overthink, right? And we've talked about Miller before with his accuracy. We've seen him make these throws a million times and letting it rip, but when you start getting in your head a little bit, start trying to aim it, start trying to be perfect. I hope I don't throw a pick. instead of saying, I'm going to go out and throw 5 touchdowns, right? Because the mind is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Especially at the quarterback spot. You can see that a little bit to where he's late on some of his reads. He hesitates a little bit. And you can tell he knows where to go with the football. His eyes are in the right spot. He's just a little bit shy to pull the trigger. And when you're late at this level, we've talked about the margin for error.
Yep.
It is a millisecond. There's a difference between a completion, a batted ball, or a pick six. And when you hesitate a little bit at a quarterback spot against, Big Ten level football, you're going to be late. You're going to have some of those turnovers. So I think like I said, the sky's the limit for him. He does have a ton of potential. I'm excited to see what he can do under Holgorsen, and maybe not this game. Hopefully it doesn't start until after that.
Sure.
And they start
Homer
working
Cody.
a little bit better
Yeah.
after this. But again, like I said, he's a very good player. Not a dual threat. I will say that, though.
Okay.
We don't have to worry about him taking off and running. He can if the play breaks down, but he's not going to do the zone read type run plays. He's not going to go out there and make a guy miss and go pick up a first down with his feet. If a play breaks down, you don't account for him. He can go create a little bit. He does a good job of throwing on the run, but not a dual threat quarterback. I think he has negative rushing yards because of the sack total as well. But like I said, overall, a good player with a ton of upside, a ton of potential. He's just struggling right now in the confidence category. But like I said, hopefully after this week, he gets it back, and I think he's going to be a good player for years to come.
Now, again, with the caveat that we don't know what to expect from Nebraska's offense on Saturday, but you said prior they like to be kind of like a 50-50 split run pass.
Yeah.
Do you still expect them to lean as heavily on the run?
I don't know.
Look into your crystal ball,
I'll
Cody.
say this. This is my note said now before Holgorsen. That's how I started.
Okay.
So
Yes.
now before talking about their run game a little bit before Holgorsen got there, what I've seen on tape. Like I said, this is a team that wants to control the clock. They want to run the football. Matt Rule has talked about over and over. Yeah, he's talked about over and over. He's emphasized we have to run the football to control the pace of the game. That's where we excel because of how well our defense is playing. You want to limit possessions for opposing teams. You want to give your defense a break. You want to extend drives, but they have struggled to do that, right? They do have 3 very talented backs, so I think are good players in Dowdwell, Emmett Johnson, and Ramir Johnson, and Ramir obviously being the more athletic of the 3 and can hurt you out of the backfield, but they just have struggled to be consistent in the run game, and I think that works hand in hand with Raiola struggling a little bit too as of late because you have so much more pressure of I've got to put points on the board now. I've got to get the pass game going.
You don't have that comfort blanket.
Where if you're struggling on a drive or two, we can go run the football 8 times on a 10-play drive and know that we're going to be successful and give ourselves at least 3 or flip the field even if we don't score. They haven't had that this year.
Okay.
They've struggled to get anything going, so it's been a lot of pressure on Raiola, but I will say this, that I think they're going to continue to try to run the football because Matt Rule is still the head coach. Now, again, Holgorsen is the big question mark. Is he coming in to be an air raid now? Are they going to throw it all over the field? But I do think they're going to continue to run the ball. They do have a physical offensive line who does a good job in run blocking. They just can't really, take that next step. You see flashes of them running the football well, but outside of that, it's just not consistent enough to be dominant in Big Ten football. And you have to be able to control the trenches. They have just not been able to do that consistently. But yeah, they will get in some power run game. You're going to see some heavy action. It's the pro style like Washington where you're going to see tight end sliding across. They're going to pull some guards, do some fly motion, hand it off like they did with some of their athletic receivers against Washington a couple weeks ago. So that's a positive for us that we did have the bye and we're facing a similar offense that we did a couple weeks ago. So that can help us on that side of the football. But again, you bring in Holgorsen, so who knows? But watch my film. That's what their run game is.
Okay.
Again, don't have to worry about Raiola in the run game except, or unless a play breaks down a little bit. But just be ready for Dowdwell and then both Johnsons as the running backs.
And you mentioned struggling in the trenches. Do you see this as an opportunity for USC's defensive line to kind of get after it and put pressure on Raiola? And where did the interceptions come in that sense?
Yeah, that kind of works hand in hand too when I was talking about the receivers and the secondary, right? Because a lot of your sacks up front can come from coverage, or a lot of your interceptions can come from errant throws because you're getting pressure, right? So they have to work hand in hand together. But like you said, they have struggled this year in pass protection. They're giving up over 2 sacks per game, 2.3 right now per game, which is 95th in college football. So we've got to take advantage of that. Another area where Raiola struggles is when he has pressure in his face, when he can't sit back there, be comfortable, go through progression. Even the most experienced quarterbacks we talked about last week with Will Rogers, who has a ton of experience at the college level. When you get pressure on a quarterback, they struggle with their decision-making. That is amplified as a freshman, right? So we've got to be able to get home on some of that pressure. I'd expect Danton Lynn this week when you're going against a freshman quarterback, similar to the NFL, when you're going against a rookie. When I started as a rookie in Cleveland, be ready for everything. Be ready for cover 0. Be ready for these all-out looks. Be ready for them to walk up 9 even or 8 and drop out into coverage. They're going to show you so many different things. This is a week for Danton Lynn as a defensive coordinator going against a freshman. He's licking his chops. He's excited. I'm going to try to confuse this freshman. I'm going to watch things on tape that he's struggled with, right? And then I'm going to apply that to our game plan and then take it to the next level. So I'm excited. But either way, we've got to do a great job. Got to be ready too this week for unique gadget and trick plays. I think Holgorsen's going to pull some, out of nowhere. He's going to show. We're going to see some stuff that we haven't seen on film yet, whether it's end around, whether it's reverses, double passes, all of that. Both teams are playing to get into a bowl game, right?
Yeah.
They need 1 win, we need 2. So it's going to be an exciting matchup. Obviously, both teams are not where they want to be this point in the season. I was hoping this would maybe be a playoff matchup.
Sure.
Just for college football. I feel like when Nebraska's good and USC's good, college football's in a better place. But still a lot to play for these two teams and a very good offense that, although they've struggled a little bit, if you don't prepare for them and you're not ready, they can come out and hurt you.
Alrighty, I want to go to the side of the ball where I think you know what to expect based on film study, Cody, the defense. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And Trojan fans celebrate every USC win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any Los Angeles area Ralph's store. Alrighty, Cody, as I mentioned, it's time to talk about Nebraska's defense, the Black Shirts. Let us know where they rank statistically.
Yeah, this is a complete different story than the offense side of the football. They've been dominant for the last 2 years, and they have again this year as well. Scoring defense only giving up 19 points per game, which is 21st in college football. Total defense just over 300 yards per game, which is 15th. Passing defense, this is where we can take a little bit of an advantage, and I think it does help Jayden a little bit this week. They have struggled in coverage. They do a good job of creating turnovers, but they have a high-risk, high-reward type of defense in the secondary, similar to Washington a week ago. So that helps us out a little bit in the pass game, but they're 50th right now in pass defense. Rushing defense, they have been very dominant. As poorly as they're running the football, they're on the opposite side on defense. They've been great at stopping the run, and we have to continue to be able to do that. So it's a huge challenge, but you want that as an offensive lineman, as an offensive player, as a play caller. Give us your best shot. We're going to go out there and show that we can run the football. They're only giving up 102 yards per game, which is 13th in college football. They've only allowed 5 touchdowns on the ground this year, which is unbelievable. That's 4th in the entire country. Third down defense, they've been very good as well, 36% conversion rate, and they've been great getting after the quarterback. They have 25 sacks already on the year.
Now, just briefly looking over the key players in your notes, I see the phrase red dot a lot, Cody.
Yeah, they got a lot of good players on this side of the football. I pretty much mentioned their entire defense and key players, and then 5 of those guys are game plan red dot type players. I'm going to start with their safety, Isaac Gifford. He's a 6'1", 205-pound senior. He's really their do-it-all player on defense. You're going to see him at safety. You're going to see him playing the Mike position in a Tampa 2 dropping scenario where he's going to start the safety, come down, play the Mike spot. You're going to see him in the flat playing a corner type position. They call him a rover on their defense is what Tony White calls him, and we're going to talk about this scheme in a second, but it's a 3-3-5, which is very uncommon. Hate going against it. I hate preparing for it as well on a podcast too. It is
even on a podcast.
It's extremely difficult.
Okay.
And we'll talk about why in a second, but he is so good for this scheme because they can use him in so many different places. 53 tackles, which leads the team and has 1 pass defense so far in the year. Their other safety is Deshaun Singleton, 6'3", 210-pound senior, 50 tackles, which is second, 1 fumble recovery, 2 pass defense. Their best linebacker on their team, and competing with Gifford, maybe their best player on defense is linebacker John Bullock, 6', 230-pound senior. He has been someone that's really benefited since White has got there in this defense. You've seen him excel over the last 2 years, and the stats back that up. He's a leader on this defense. Love to bring him in pressure looks. Does a great job in run fits, but also does a good job getting after the quarterback. 49 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 3 pass defense, 1 interception, which was a pick 6 against Purdue. He does it all for this defense. Wow. The other linebacker alongside of him is Mike Bayer, 6'2", 230-pound junior, 39 tackles, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery, 1 pass defense. Now, a familiar name.
Yeah.
And a red dot player, not just because of who he is or since we know him. He has been playing at a very high level this year for Nebraska as cornerback Keely Eure, right?
Yeah.
He's a 6', 180-pound junior. He's a transfer from USC. I'm sure a lot of Trojan fans recognize that name. He had to step up this year because of injuries, right? They had one of their starters at the cornerback position get hurt. So he came in, obviously being a transfer player, didn't know what to expect. He earned a black shirt during the year.
Okay.
So became a starter. They announced that he earned a black shirt. He has been playing phenomenal football. It's not, I'm not just saying this because obviously he came to USC and I was focused more on him on the tape when you break it down. He has been playing at a very high level right now. He's, in my opinion, probably their best cover corner in their secondary so far this season. Has 28 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, and 5 pass defense. He does a great job right now of staying hip to hip. He's very sticky right now in man coverage, which is interesting because I felt like he struggled. We saw flashes of it, but he struggled with the consistency here a little bit at USC, but that's the case for a lot of people. NFL, college, you get a change of scenery. Yeah. You know, you maybe kind of, you revitalize.
He's younger too.
Yeah, and you're a younger player. You have more experience, but I got to give him credit. Sierra's been playing high level football. He's a red dot player, and like I said, probably their best cover corner this week. Got to know where he's at in the pass game at all times. Now, another very good cover player in the back end is safety Malcolm Hartzog Jr., 5'9", 180-pound junior. another red dot player this week. Now, he did miss the UCLA game with an injury, but Rule mentioned that he should be available for USC is what they said. So expect him to be in the secondary, another ball hawk back there on the back end. 27 tackles, 4 interceptions, 3 pass defense. They do a good job. Like I mentioned, some of those high risk, high rewards. If you're a little bit late with your decision, they will get their hand on the football. And their nickel defensive back is Marquez Buford Jr., 5'11", 190-pound junior. Their other cornerback, it's a good cover player who did have an injury that allowed Keely Eure to get some playing time this year, is cornerback Tommy Hill, 6', 205-pound senior. Very good player. Like I said, he was out for a couple of weeks with an injury. He did come back for the UCLA game, so I expect him to be healthy in this game. Has 19 tackles, 1 interception, and 1 pass defense. 2 very good, probably the best. Tough to say because of Michigan, but this is right up there with 2 very good interior players on their defensive line. This is going to be a huge challenge for Jonah Monheim, for Emmanuel Pregnon, for Alani Noah this week. It feels like a broken record.
It's a bingo card.
In the Big Ten. Yeah,
seriously.
But their first player up front is D-tackle Nash Hutmaker, 6'4", 310-pound senior, 18 tackles, 2 sacks. Very good interior defensive lineman. Great in run defense, but also does a good job in pass rush. And probably my biggest red dot on their defense is their other defensive tackle, Ty Robinson, 6'6", 310-pound senior, 23 tackles and 5 sacks, which leads the team. And you know how I always say, well, he's an interior player, so he's not going to jump off the stat sheet. He jumps off the stat sheet. 5 sacks as a shade player, as a 3-tech on the inside is very impressive. You're not getting a ton of one-on-one matchups on the outside. You're having to deal with a guard-center combo. You're having to deal with those interior players. It's a lot more difficult going through the middle of the defense, but he's been phenomenal getting to the quarterback. Like I said, a huge problem in the middle of this defense, huge challenge, specifically, for the guys in the middle, but specifically for Jonah Monheim. Can't wait to watch. And he's getting his money's worth this year. NFL scouts are getting to watch him play against some of the best players on the inside every week, so it's going to help him a ton. I think he's done a phenomenal job, so I'm excited for this matchup with Monheim and Robinson. And then 2 of their other defensive linemen. The first one is Jamari Butler, 6'5", 260-pound junior. Be ready for him to move around a lot. You're going to see him in a 2-point stance. You're going to see him in a 3-point stance with his hands in the dirt. Then move him inside, outside. And then the last one is defensive lineman James Williams, 6'6", 250-pound sophomore, a younger player, but already has 4 sacks this year and does a good job getting after the quarterback.
Now, you mentioned it at the top. It's a nightmare to prepare for a 3-3-5 defense. Why is that?
Because majority of the time you're used to a 4-3 or a 3-4 or even a 4-2-5 or 2-4-5, however you want to mix it up. But a 3-3-5 is very unique, and it's uncommon. That's why it's difficult, because you don't have a ton of plays.
Experience.
You don't prepare for it a lot in the offseason as well.
Yeah.
Unless you're a team that your opposing defense does, or your defense
you're going
does
up
run
against
a 3-3-5.
it. Yeah.
But outside of that, it's very unique. Not a lot of teams do this, but it's difficult. When you can master it, it's difficult to go against. You will see at times they're going to show you some 4-down looks, especially on 3rd down. They'll mix up with the 3-3-5. You can easily make small adjustments to get to a 4-3 or a 3-4 because of its flexibility. But majority of the game, you're going to see 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs, whether you're in base, nickel, whatever it may be, like I said, except for 3rd down. And why it's so difficult is because the first reason is blitz combinations. There's so many different things you can do with linebackers, with safeties. You're going to see so much different pressure. That's why Sierra Wright has a sack. That's why a couple of their safeties have a couple sacks. That's why their interior defensive lineman has a couple sacks, because you can move the front around. You can bring him from the inside. You can bring him from the outside. You're going to see Butler, like I said, with his hand in the dirt. You're going to see him move outside. You're going to see majority of the game 2 interior players with their hand in the dirt. Butler's going to be stood up, and then they're going to have a linebacker walk up. So it's going to look kind of like a 4-down, but the other part of that that's difficult is because the identification and the blocking scheme and who you're going to and trying to create double teams and all that is a nightmare. It changes every single play. And then when you spread out and go wide, and then they're going to go 3-3 stack like Utah State did, right? But the advantage of that is you can run the football on the edges. That's where you want to be able to take advantage in the run game, because when you have a 3-3-5, it's normally considered a lighter box, right? Only 3 linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 DBs. You should be able to run the football. Nebraska has been phenomenal at stopping the run because of their physicality up front. The second thing with that, as a quarterback, it's difficult because you're going to see a lot of drop 8, right? When you normally have a regular look or a 4-3 or a 3-4, you're normally going to have 4 defensive linemen or a 3 defensive lineman with a rush in who's technically a stand-up defensive end.
Yeah.
And then when you want to drop 8, you have to drop a defensive lineman into coverage. Well, when you just drop coverage and bring your front, you already have 8 players, right? So you have 5 underneath and 3 on the backside. It is impossible, especially in zone, to find a hole in this defense, right? Got to be smart. Got to take off and run. Got to find your check down. Don't force some of these throws, right? Protect the football. And then the other thing with the 3-3-5 is it's tough to find double teams. You're going to see stack looks. You're going to see wide 9 techniques, wide 7 techniques, a head up nose. It's tough to find those double teams. Then they'll walk up and go 5 down. So it's one-on-one across the board. But it is a very difficult defense to go against. And like I said, you don't spend a lot of time preparing for it because you don't see it a whole lot. But when you master it like White has, he did at Syracuse as well, But like he has at Nebraska, you have seen that dramatic jump from last year and this year to how well they've been as opposed to 2 years ago because of how good they've been able to do this and the flexibility and the versatility that you have with your playmakers on defense.
Well, given what you just described, this seems like a what's the opposite of ideal? Unideal?
Yeah.
Words. Unideal situation for Jayden.
Well,
he's had an extra week, so I guess that's helpful.
Which is good. But this, I mean, people call the 3-3-5 too the spread defense sometimes because it's built to stop the pass, right? You're normally vulnerable in the run game, but it's built to stop the pass. Like I said, you can drop 8 the entire game and still have 3 very good pass rushers up front to get home. You can bring pressure and bring in a linebacker pressure instead of bringing 4 plus 1.5, 5. Now you can bring a pressure with only a 4-man look and still drop 7 into coverage and do a good job in coverage backside and still do some, mix-ups up front and different twist games and bring a linebacker off the right side, off the left, bring a safety instead, and then you still have 4 DBs on the back end, so you're not losing coverage in the secondary. So it's just there's so many different things you can do. But like I said, the pressure combinations are tough. The one-on-one blocks are a nightmare. It's tough to find double teams, and then it's tough to throw the football because they're going to drop 8 majority of the time, and they're going to have 5 underneath and 3 over top, and there's not a lot of holes in this defense.
So the keys for Jayden, how do you become successful in your first true start at USC?
Take care of the football by taking what the defense gives you, right? You have to be smart. Protect Lincoln Riley this week. Coach Riley is going to call shots down the field. I know he will, especially with the arm that Jayden has. And there are going to be shots down the field. They're going to play some too high looks to where the middle of the field's open. They're going to play too high looks where you can pump inside and work outside. And those, when they play cloud, when there's a corner underneath and safety over top, you have those whole shot areas that you can work. But majority of the game, if they're going to play off, they're going to play zone, which they will. They'll mix up and play some man, especially on third down when they bring some pressure. Be ready for cover 0, but take what the defense gives you. It's okay to take a couple underneath routes and then take those shots when they're there because Lincoln will keep calling them. But if he's calling them and you're forcing the football, and you have an interception or you're giving the defense a chance to make a play on the football, you're not protecting your coach, you're not protecting the play call. If it's not there, fine, check it down, we'll get back to it. We'll call it a little bit later until we get the look that we want. But right now, going into this football game, you have to understand, complete the football, right? Completion percentage is going to be important. Get the ball out of your hands, don't take some of those sacks, and just continue to take little plays until those chunk plays happen. But yeah, it's going to be tough. If I had to pick a bad situation for Jayden to go into, or not bad, but least ideal situation,
yes,
I would hate for him to have to face a 3-3-5 because as a quarterback, pre-snap identification and communication is also a nightmare because you're not used to seeing 3 linemen, 3 linebackers, right? You're used to seeing a 3-4 or a 4-3. That's the most common thing that you see, but now you're doing identifications that you're not used to doing, and it's a whole different animal when you play a 3-3-5.
How does the 3-3-5 account for a quarterback's mobility in that sense?
Yeah, well, a place that we have an advantage in this when you go against a 3-3-5 is that they struggle because you want to create double teams, right? And those man blocking, when you're A blocking, B blocking, but we run a lot of pullers, right? We run the guard tackle pull, so you're down blocking. You don't have to worry as much about double teams. You can get up to the second level a little bit easier in these zone blocking schemes, which we do a good job of. And we also, with Jayden, have a quarterback that can hurt you on the ground. So you're not going to be able with those backside defensive ends, with the safeties coming off the edge, with the players on the outside, their linebacker that they walk to the edge, they can't just automatically crash down and take what he marks. They have to be responsible for Jayden because he is a threat in the run game. So that's going to help us a ton. Although they've been great at stopping the run, we can't get away from it. Right? We have to make it a point of emphasis because against Penn State, we talked about how good they are. We came out and ran the football at will. That was something that was confident for us to see. Michigan ran the football well, right? The teams that are normally good at stopping the run, that have been good at stopping the run, we've shown that we can run the football. So we've got to be able to do that early. Yes, they struggle in the secondary a little bit. That's where I say their weak point. They're still top 50 in the country in that area, in that category. But we've got to be able to throw it. We've got to be balanced this week. But I think Jayden is going to help a ton because he adds that extra element. But it's not going to be as advantageous when he takes off and run because when you have a 3-3-5, you basically have 8 skill players on the back end, right? You have 3 linebackers that are athletic, they can move sideline to sideline, and you have 5 defensive backs that can come down and tackle. But he's still got to be able to take off and run and make some things happen with his legs, especially when they do these drop 8s. They drop into coverage. Find your check down, take off and run, or throw it away this week. That's fine. Just protect the play call, protect Lincoln Riley, protect your offense. Don't turn the football over. And then when the shots are there, when those advantages are there down the field, then you make the most of them. And if that has to be with your legs taking off and running, you got to be able to do that.
Now, skimming through your notes, I saw a theme that we've had through this Big Ten season: unique looks on third down. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, you got to be ready for some of those unique looks. It's pretty much everywhere now. It's become, like I said, it's a copycat league, college, NFL. You want to try to create havoc on third down now. It's not quite Lynn or Martindale or some of these different looks or Belichick from a week ago, but this is where they get a little bit away from their 3-3 looks. They're going to bring, at times, an extra defensive end in. They're going to bring 4 pass rushers in so they can pin their ears back, get after the quarterback, be ready for pressure on gotta-have-it situations, be ready for cover 0. But we've got to be able to mix up the snap count this week. That's my biggest thing for Jayden, so that he can understand what's happening pre-snap, especially on third down, because there's going to be times where guys are tight to the line of scrimmage and they're going to drop out and play that safety spot. You're going to have a safety come up and play Mike. Like I've talked about, you're going to have a linebacker that's going to have a corner's responsibility playing the flat. So you've got to be ready for all these post-snap looks, but you've got to mix up the snap count. I would love for us this week to get up there and Coach Riley make it a point of emphasis to have those check with me plays or those ghost type plays, right? Where you get up there as soon as the play's in or the previous play ends, get up there, line up in whatever you want, trips, double, deuce, whatever you want, 2x2, 3x1, get up there, fake the snap count, try to get them to show their hand, and then call the play so that they can still communicate. It's going to be huge this week of being able to line up quickly so we have enough time in the play clock for the in-helmet communication for Coach Riley and Jayden, especially with his first start. But again, don't complicate it. Don't think too much into it. Obviously, it's a game within a game. Third down is going to be some unique looks. You're not going to see anything that you haven't prepared for before. You're not going to see anything that you haven't dealt with Coach Lynn in practice, especially Jayden doing some of the scout team stuff, going against our first defense. So just take it one play at a time. And another thing, when they play man or 2-man like they do, be ready to take off and hurt them with your legs and pick up a couple first downs on the ground.
Now, I know this is a quote-unquote relatively new defense for Nebraska, but they have a lot of experience. When you went through the key players, there's a lot of juniors and seniors. Does that show up on film, just that experience?
Yeah, they do a very good job of playing sound football. You don't see, kind of like Penn State's defense, right? You don't see, although it's chaos and a lot of different looks and 3-3-5 and different personnel groupings and constantly moving safeties and guys playing different. Like the way they describe it too is they're positionless. That's how they describe their defense, right? Guys aren't a set safety. Guys aren't a set corner. Guys aren't a set linebacker. You're going to play anywhere all over the field. Even the defensive linemen at time are going to move around and play different techniques in different spots, but they do a great job of having controlled chaos. You don't see a lot of times where they're out of position, right? You don't have a top 25, top 20 defense if you're giving up big play after big play. They eliminate those explosive plays. They do a good job of keeping everything in front of them. They do have a high risk, high reward on the back end, so we can take advantage of some of those plays. But with Jayden, he's got to be extremely accurate. And the other thing, too, is you've got to be able to protect up front. They do a good job. Like I said, pre-snap communication, they're going to try to get you to go one way, send the protection this way, bring pressure the other way, right? And if you guess wrong, that's fine. Just know where your hots are. Know to get the ball out. Don't make a bad play worse. Don't try to force a throw. Yeah. But like I said, they do a good job with all the different things they mix up and the 3-3-5 look. It is when you, and obviously I've never been on defense, but when you hear coaches talk about a 3-3-5 or when you hear players talk about a 3-3-5, they say from our point of view, it's easy, right? From the defensive point of view, it's easy to understand, right? They break it down to a sense of, like I said, I just know what my responsibility is every play. I'm not worried about if I'm the Mike or the Sam or strong safety or rover, or I just know what my responsibility is every play. And they break it down that way so that that positionless thing comes into play and you just know what you're supposed to do. And they do a good job of that. There's not a lot of missed assignments. Not a lot of times guys are out of position, but it's going to be tough. It's a big challenge for Jayden in this offense. But hey, as your first game as a starter, what better way to come in and make a big impact and go against one of the better defenses in the Big Ten.
Alrighty, Cody, any other thoughts before we move on?
No, like I said, just very disciplined group, doesn't make a ton of unforced errors. They do a good job of getting after the quarterback. They do a good job of stopping the run. We just have to have a great game plan in place. I'm excited. Again, another week with Lincoln Riley going against a top defensive coordinator in the country in the Big Ten Conference. So it's Coach Riley versus Tony White, and I'm excited for this one on Saturday.
Love these matchups. You always get me so excited for them.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, let's look at the game as a whole. It's time for the USC Mann School of Pharmacy prescription to win. The keys to the game for USC against Nebraska. First up, get pressure on Nebraska's quarterback. Yeah,
he's had struggles a little bit this year, especially as of late. 1 touchdown and 6 interceptions in his last 4 games. We've got to be able to get home with our pass rush. We have some younger players up front, right, that are continuing to get better, continuing to learn under Coach Henderson. They've got to take that next step this week. We can't allow Raiola to sit back there and go through progression and get comfortable in the pocket.
The second key to the game, continue to run the football.
Yeah, this is a great challenge this week. One of the best run defenses, not only in the Big Ten, but in the entire country. We've got to be able to continue to establish the ground game. We did a great job in the second half against Washington, but this week against Nebraska, we ought to come out early on and make it a point of emphasis to run the football, to have a balanced attack, to take some of that pressure off of Jayden Maiava. But also, I'd love to see Jayden be a factor in the run game as well and use his legs to create some big plays.
The third and final key to the game, eliminate eliminate turnovers.
Yeah, the most important key to the game for me this week is winning the turnover battle. Too many times this year, we've been in those close games where I've talked about the margin for error is so small that we have these costly turnovers, especially in the second half when we have opportunities to pull away or put the game away. We have to eliminate this week. Nebraska has struggled when they turn the football over. So this is a huge week for us to protect the football, but also have some takeaways on defense.
Alrighty, Cody, let's dive into questions. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Fight on.
Fight on.
There you go, Cody. Well done. Alrighty, let's head into questions. First one is from Rama, and he said, how do receivers and the offensive line adjust to a new quarterback and one that is more mobile than the other?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is just staying extra after practice this week. Watch some extra film in the film room. Spend some extra time on the practice field when practice is over. Don't leave Howard Jones right away. Get some extra slants in. Get a couple extra deep shots in, right? We've talked about one of Jayden's strength is his deep ball accuracy and the arm strength that he has. Work on some of those go balls. Work on some of those 50-50 throws that you want to take advantage of in this game, because when you have those man-to-man matchups, when you have those opportunities down the field, you've got to be able to hit them if we want to be explosive on offense. And then when it comes to the mobility factor, and you normally work on this in practice, but you can maybe spend some extra time on the scramble drill, right? And what you do with that is you work on, if you're deep on a play and the quarterback starts to scramble, make sure you come back to the football. If you're down low, make sure you work up top, right? There's normally levels when you're rolling right. You want to have a high, a medium, and a low. Same thing when you're going to the left. So you can work on that a little bit more, because Jayden does use his legs a little bit more, and that's a strength of his game, is being able to take off and run, but also create with his feet. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is spend some extra time in the film room, but also stay after on Howard Jones Field and get some extra throws in so that you feel comfortable going into this week.
And to Jayden's credit, he has spent every practice that we've been to and been able to get media availability. In the background is him throwing.
100%.
Throwing all the time.
And I'll say, too.
And you saw it, too.
When I got to come, when practice ends, we get to come in there and I get to do some of the coaches' interviews for away games. He is always out there throwing, whether it's with a trainer or one of the equipment
Jay Fair
managers,
has been his guy.
One of his receivers. And that's what that's the biggest thing, though, with that question is he's used to throwing with some of those guys that are maybe 2 on the depth chart or 3 on the depth chart with the scout team or with some of the backups. Now you've got to spend some extra time this week with Deuce and Jacoby and Kyron and all those guys that are starters. But I don't have any, I have no doubts with that. He also was in a competition in the offseason, so it wasn't like he was just going with the 2s and 3s all fall camp or all spring ball. He was competing with Miller for that starting spot, so he does have some continuity with those guys, but you've got to up that a little bit more this week. And he did have the bye week, which is an extra week as well. So I'm excited. I think he'll be ready to go, and the receivers and him will be on the same page. I'm
really glad Trojan Mom, your mom, asked this question, because I think we've been so tunnel vision on preview mode that we forgot to mention this, and it's definitely worthy of mentioning. John Robinson, legendary USC coach, passed away earlier this week. She said, could you share your favorite memories with him? So many great stories with this amazing man. May he rest in peace, which we agree. Obviously, we talked about it on Trojans Live, but just you have a chance now, Cody, to talk about it as well.
Well, and I actually talked to my mom about this yesterday, and she mentioned, I totally forgot, but John Robinson came down to Bakersfield at a restaurant called Luigi's. Little promo there, shout out Luigi's. It's a restaurant in Bakersfield, and they do like a USC donor or a fundraiser type event. And me and John Robinson were both speaking at it. And this was years ago. It might have been when I was, I think, maybe a freshman or something.
Okay.
But I got to go back home, and he was there, and it was so cool. We just went back and forth, and I'm in awe, obviously, going to USC, and you hear about McKay and John Robinson and Pete Carroll, all these great coaches that come from USC and that made USC what it is today. And Robinson's obviously at the top of that list. And just what he did for this program was unbelievable. But to get to see him in person and share that memory with him and get to talk to him about USC football. And I'm sitting there, and we're doing Q&A with the fans, and I forget that I'm doing the A part of it. I'm supposed to be answering, but I'm sitting there just in awe, listening to him tell stories about his days at USC football. So, rest in peace to one of the greatest Trojans ever. It's unbelievable what he did here at USC. Our condolences go out to his family. 1,000%. He will be forever enshrined in USC football and in the college football world and just football in general. So, I'm glad we brought that up. But, that was a cool memory for me, and his, like we said, his memory will live on forever here at USC. For sure. Another newsworthy item this week was from Mr. Ashcraft. He says, how fire are those throwback unis? Oh, yeah. And speaking of John Robinson. What a perfect time. It's like an honor of him. For that to happen. Great. That was cool. I will say this. The one argument I did see, which I think would be sweet, is someone talked about the Keyshawn jersey, maybe making the Cardinal face mask as well. Now, I'll take the jerseys and it's cool because it's not, and there's always been that fine line with USC football. The tradition. abandon tradition and go to some of the new ones, or do you stick with what it's always been, right? But you're still doing both, right? You're giving a little bit of a modernized version of a throwback jersey. So it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be sweet. I can't wait to see those on Saturday.
No, I'm definitely excited to see it in the Coliseum. And the last time that anything in USC's uniform changed was actually when you were playing, right, Cody?
Oh, yeah. You talking about the Chromes?
The Chrome
Chrome
helmet that were controversial.
Well, yeah, that was controversial. My freshman year, too, we did we got away from they do it now, but we were the first ones to kind of get away from the black cleats. Remember we started doing the Cardinal socks and the Cardinal gold and the Cardinal cleats, the shiny cleats.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's the best of both worlds. Do you know, though, follow up, you may not, are they doing throwback end zone field painting, or is that TBD?
That's a great question, and I don't know.
That'd be cool, though. That'd
be really cool.
The checkered,
the Argyle.
That's what it's called, right? I'm not really looking up. But either way, no, those jerseys, like I said, best of both worlds. You're honoring tradition, but you're also giving like a modernized look to it. So it's going to be sweet. I'm excited.
I am too. Speaking of the Coliseum, we have a question from the Heady Stuff, at Heady Stuff. He says, Keely, can you please do some investigative journalism and find out why they pretend like the peristyle torch is malfunctioning? The first time everyone did the cell phone lighting thing and it lit. At Rutgers, it never did. What gives? My kid loves the quote-unquote real torch. Now, the first time that it didn't light was because that was when we had a crazy heat wave in Los Angeles.
Was that the Utah State power outage?
That's the power was out for half of the Coliseum, and they assumed that also connected to the actual torch. So the meme was the power of friendship and fandom lit the torch against Utah State, but it was a power outage.
Okay.
It did light, though. The only time that it didn't light was last home game.
Yeah, Rutgers.
And I talked to my Coliseum sources, and they have not gotten back to me.
Okay.
They are looking into it, so I will let you know.
Did it not light for the entire fourth quarter?
It did not, no.
Wow.
It had like a little baby flame, but it wasn't like the flame. And so I apologize on behalf of the torch, but I don't know. So
you're the official spokesperson.
I am.
I'll tell you what, though. That's we talked about the tradition. I'm with you on
there you go.
I ditto on that question. We've got to get that fixed. That can't happen.
Okay, but it happened technically once. The other one was a county-wide power outage situation.
Hey, it still happened, right?
And it's still lit, though.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Power friendship. That's right.
You were driving home, but
yeah, I wasn't. I don't normally stay for the second half, but yes, I'm with you on that. I ditto that question. We've got to get that fixed. That's awesome to see.
Ricky D said, hypothetical, if Maiava struggles, do you see Miller Moss coming back in?
No, not this game, unless, knock on wood, barring injury or something happens in that sense. You can't do that in this football game, especially this year, right? Obviously, we're 4-5. We're not where we want to be. We're not playing for a playoff spot. We're not playing for a Big Ten championship. You've got to let Maiava have a fair shot, right? He's going to make some mistakes early on. That's fine. Be patient with him. He's going to be able to go out there and show you some flashes of how good he can be. And we're going to see a little bit of both, I think, in my opinion. Now, do I want him to go out there and be perfect, right, and have a perfect passer rating and throw 5 touchdowns and run for a touchdown as well and no interceptions? Can that happen? Sure. And Coach Riley is one of the best offensive play callers in the country, especially when it comes to the quarterback spot. And I think Jayden fits perfectly into what he wants to do on offense. So I think there's absolutely a possibility for him to go out and dominate in this football game. But if he does make some mistakes early on, if he does have an interception, if he does have a fumble, whatever it may be, something that causes some adversity, don't give up on him, right? Don't get frustrated. Allow him to work through that. Remember, he's still a young quarterback. He's only played 1 year of college football as a freshman last year at UNLV. Now he's playing in the Big Ten against a very good defense. So be patient with him, give him time. But I have all the confidence in the world with him. But this is his opportunity to go out and show if he can be the quarterback of the future here at USC.
Now, also in the news this week was the NCAA announcing sanctions and a probation for USC. We have many questions about that. I know fans were genuinely curious, what does this mean? Because it was kind of vague. I have more clarity on that, and I do have notes about it. So if I reference them, that's why. I just want to make sure I don't misrepresent anything.
I'm curious too. Good. I'm glad you're doing this.
Well, I actually wanted to get clarity on this because I feel like there's just a lot out there, and you hear the word probation, you hear the word sanctions, and you're like, oh my gosh, what does this actually mean? So just to bring more clarity, this was based on some analysts in 2022 and 2023 coaching on the field during practice, which was impermissible at the time, but now it is permissible.
Okay.
But the biggest point was that Lincoln Riley was unaware of the violations until USC was notified in May of 2023, which if you listen to his presser on Tuesday, he said, we've known this situation for a while. So this is kind of already in the past. I think the NCAA just announced the case details on Tuesday. And if you want to get more details, that's where you should ultimately reference because I'm not going to be able to really give you the full summary here. But the key things to note, I know probation was something that everyone was like, what does that actually mean? So what that means is that it's a period under which the institution is under stricter scrutiny and must adhere to specific terms. In this case for USC, the terms are primarily around improved rules education, so compliance, and self-imposed penalties. And so some of that is a $50,000 fine. Analysts have to miss practices and or film. There's no bowl ban. There's no coach suspension. The NCAA specifically praised USC's cooperation and promptness, Riley's acknowledgement of the violations and agreement to a negotiated resolution. So overall, in my eyes, this was like a slap on the wrist from the NCAA, especially because this was something that was not permissible and is now. Okay. So I think the word probation in the sense is making sure that there's increased rules education, informing the NCAA on progress of said education, and informing prospects of said violations. So
yeah, well, I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yes.
That
Hopefully
was good. Well
I did.
Done.
There was a lot of
that makes
information,
sense.
so I hope I
100%.
disseminated it well there. Chadster said, how does the team react when a quarterback is benched and replaced? Both positive and negative sides, please.
Yeah, there is a little bit of both, right? The positive side first is you want to create that spark, and Coach Riley talked about trying some different things on offense, and this is one area where they wanted to try what was have a new quarterback go in there, see what Jayden can do, and like I mentioned, the record being 4-5, it's not a pivotal point in this season. You're not out there trying to play for a playoff spot or a Big Ten championship, so you have an opportunity to experiment a little bit and see what he can do. So the positives is you're excited for the guy, right? Everyone's still on the same team. Everyone, no matter who the starter is at any position, everybody wants the same outcome, right? You want to win football games. You want to show that you can have consistency on offense, consistency on defense. You want to show that your program's going in the right direction no matter who's on the field, right? And everyone's working towards a common goal. So that part of things, everyone's excited for Jayden, right? Come out here, show us what you can do. We're 4-5 right now. Let's treat these last 3 games as a new season, right? This is it. We're 0-0 right now going into this game and really go out there and see what he can do with this opportunity. But the negative side too is you feel for the guy, right? And as much as we respect Miller and wanted him to be the guy and are thankful for his commitment to USC, that is multiplied by 10, by 100 by his teammates, right? Because they're there with the guy day in and day out. They were with him when he was the backup, right? And it's a similar thing. When Miller got his chance, everyone was excited when Caleb left. Same thing with Jayden. Although it's different circumstances, you're going to be excited for whoever's out there. And I have no doubt in my mind that Miller's going to be supporting Jayden and be his biggest fan and biggest supporter on the sideline because he is a team-first type guy. But yeah, it's mixed emotions, right? There's positives because you want that spark and you're excited for Jayden's opportunity, but you're also a little upset, and there's negatives to Miller, having it not work out the way that he wanted and the rest of the team wanted for him. Keely does have to go. You wear many hats, and you have basketball meeting to get to for.
My schedule is different now. It's part of the year.
Shout out to USC women's and men's basketball right now. They're off to a hot start.
Program record win on Tuesday night.
124 points for the women.
Yes.
Unbelievable. But either way, we're done. We got to get going. I'm excited. USC football is back. It's been a long bye week. A lot of things happened this week. Groundbreaking new facility. We'll talk more about that probably on our recap episode when we have more time.
Given the fact that time is short now, we will address more and answer some of the questions we didn't get to in our Sunday episode. For sure.
Perfect. But either way, fight on. Love you guys. Let's go get a win. Hey, treat these last 3 games like a new season. Let's go out there and dominate. See what Jayden can do. See what this offense and defense can do, and build some momentum going into 2025.
Alrighty, you heard the man. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.